Welcome back to the Sports Complex on a Tuesday afternoon. On the show today, we'll get in to a disappointing overtime loss for the Texas Longhorns men's basketball team. Get into some more Big 12 basketball games that will be happening tonight. Some NBA, all three Texas teams were in action last night. We'll get into those. Talk a little bit about a statement by Jason Kidd that may rile up some older fans. But we'll see. I want to see where you guys stand on that one. And, of course, we'll get into more NFL. The coaching carousel continues to roll. And Jerry Jones talked to the media, had some stuff to say. We'll get into all of that. And, of course, your text messages, 512-447-3776, 512-447-3776 is the text line. You guys drive the show. I just try to keep it on the rails. That means we try and answer every single text here on the Sports Complex, whatever you guys want to talk about. Of course, we'll have the big fat poll of the day as well coming up here at the end of the segment. Get you involved with the show as well. Always enjoy talking to you guys on the text line. All right. Can I filibuster? Should I filibuster some before we get to the talk about Texas basketball? Should we filibuster about having to work and then traffic was terrible? It's always bad. This is the worst. I will say this. I'll filibuster with this, the worst thing for me now is at the end of the show and I've got a couple things to do. And then I hear that last traffic report at the end of the show and you're just like kind of trying to wrap things up and all right, get home. And then, I'm going to make some dinner before the game. And so I have to get stuff ready. And that's what I'm trying to do. And you think, okay, I'll plan it out. I'll get back. I got to run by the store real quick, and this will happen and that, and I have time, and I might be able to get to the gym before the game. And then the traffic report comes on and goes, avoid all the roads you use to get home. They're all backed up. That was not a fun way to start the evening yesterday, and then went downhill from there. But finished up and after that game, and then still went to the gym and still try to go through life, even though Texas does lose last night to Houston. It was not the worst case scenario. It is just a bit more of a measuring stick of where this Texas team is this season and where their ceiling may be. And, this is a team that last year, I think, late in the season showed that they could be better than we thought they were going to be. They definitely made an impact at the end of the season. Were able to make that run to the Elite Eight, and that was a great run. But when you watch games like last night, you see the lack of intensity in the first half, and knowing that you're coming out on national television on ESPN. You're the feature game at 8 p.m. on a Monday night against the number 4 team in the country, and this is a big matchup, and they got the stripe out, and you're at home, and you still can't come out and be up for it physically and mentally like you need to be. And silly turnovers, just no offensive cohesion whatsoever, no reality of how physical of a game this is going to be when you've watched film and you've done everything. And I get it was a short turnaround after Saturday, but you have to understand what you're walking into on Monday. And it did not feel like Texas was until they got into the room and just get mollywopped in that first half, holding them to 35% from the field, 23% from 3 of 13 for 3, taking a lot of bad threes as well, just trying to take desperation shots as they didn't feel comfortable driving in and creating contact. And look, the refs swallowed their whistle for a lot of the game, which is okay. If you're going to swallow it both ways, which is what they did, I'm more okay with that than calling every little thing because you don't want to see those star players foul out of games. But for the intensity not to be there in the first half was a real sign of where the veterans on this team, and I know they're new, but a guy like Mac Abmas, you want to see him set the bar early, and he's not a physical player. This isn't his style of game, but you want to see him try and bring some more energy early. You want to see Dylan Dessou try and bring some energy. Dylan Mitchell is young, but he needs to bring some energy. He did in the second half, but he wasn't able to do it early in the game, and it put Texas behind the 8 ball going into that second half. The second half, they did respond, and that's where you start to see what Texas is capable of, what Texas can do, but the consistency just game in and game out has not been there for Texas, and they're going to have to find a bit more of that consistency where sometimes it's a bad first half, sometimes a bad second, but playing 40 minutes of basketball has not been a real factor for Texas so far this season. We saw Dylan Mitchell in the second half. He started to find a little bit more of that Dennis Rodman in him, and you don't have to be an elite scorer of, shooting the ball, but we need you to go in there and use your athleticism on guys that are just bumping you around. Well, you can bump them with your athleticism too. And I know he missed a box out at the end, which is because he was trying. It wasn't his man, really. He was out on the outside. The man slipped around him. It was unfortunate to miss that. Houston's a really good rebounding team. You'd like to see him be able to get in there and get the box out. But I've watched the play like 5 or 6 times just to try and figure out how he missed it. And it wasn't necessarily the easiest. It wasn't something where he wasn't paying attention to it. You can watch him trying to slide his body around to get to it without fouling, and he just can't get around on that block at the end of the game in the overtime. That's disappointing. And there was one earlier, too, where, his man gets free because he has to come over on the help because the frontside defender could not get in front of the guy. And so it ends up where Dylan Mitchell gets pulled out and it becomes an easy putback. And at the end of the day, you can't allow 19 second chance points. You can't allow 15 offensive rebounds against Houston because that's what they want to do. The problem is most teams do allow 19 second chance points to Houston. Most teams do allow 15 offensive rebounds. So you're not going to beat yourself up over the head and say, wow, we're the worst team in the league. But you are going to say, hey, man, if we want to compete at the level we want to, we have to stop those types of plays. They come out in the second half. They shoot 60% from field, 60% from three. They take a lot less threes, try to get to the basket a bit more in the second half, get the ball down low. It becomes a much better second half. We see them be able to come back, tie the game up. They're not able to get the game-winning shot off in time. The turnover by Kendall Weaver, where it's still youth, and those are just parts of growing up in the league. And where he's getting more minutes than he was expected, playing 25 minutes last night, and the impact he can have in these games. This was a good game for him again. The BYU game wasn't his best, a lot of effort, but I think some of it was misguided. This one played a lot better. This was more his style of game as well for Kendall Weaver. But this is probably an unpopular take. And again, look, I'll put this one out there too, just so if anybody on the text line wasn't, they got to hit your free throws. You have to rebound. Like we know, you have to hit your free throws. If you hit some of your free throws, then Texas isn't in the situation where it's even overtime and they win the game. I get that. But this is an unpopular opinion that I think some people have, is that Max Abmas right now, you have to find a way to not have him be so ball dominant. Because teams are targeting him, and he's not necessarily making the right decisions a lot of the time because he is going to be a bulk shooter. But Max Abmas, if he goes 6 for 15, it's really going to hurt this Texas team because they don't have the depth for anyone else to step up in that role. And I'm not putting on Max Abmas that he's not being a really good player, and he's not the second best player on this team. I'll still say Dylan Disu is a better player than him, at least a better impact player in what he can do with his size and ability. Pound for pound, probably Max Abmas is a better player. But Dylan Disu has got the size and what he can do inside rebounding, what he can do, his passing. He's done a lot of things really well. Max Abmas, the bulk shooting, it's got to be, you have to kind of try and limit that a little bit more, that if you're not hitting those shots and if you're covered, I know you're getting those passes late, but trying to instigate some more offense, that seems to be a big issue for Texas so far this season. And as much as people are getting on Tyrese Hunter, his numbers are not bad. Tyrese Hunter, the issue is he's not being dominant. But his numbers aren't bad. Now, you can look at IT Horton and say maybe that one isn't working out. That transfer isn't working out the way we want it to. You can look at Caden Shedrick and say through the injuries, that transfer is not working out just the way we want it to. He did have some decent minutes in this game. Offensively, he hasn't been as good as he was earlier in the season. But for Texas, you have to now look at a team where you took the number 4 team in the country to overtime. So we'll be happy about that. But there's no moral victories at Texas. And you should have won that game. Texas should have won the game against Houston last night. So how do you rebound after that, get back onto it, say, okay, these are the things we need to fix, and we're on a Big 12 schedule where, yes, we can say, well, we need to play more physically, but you can't every night because if you walk in and play a road game where they want to flop around on the floor a lot, you're going to get fouled out of every game because the Big 12 refs are not consistent in how they call games. And so I think it's going to be a consistent issue for Texas is trying to find what their identity is because they have not set it halfway into Big 12 play, is their identity. They kind of shapeshift so far. They've been a good field goal percentage team, but that's not really an identity that you can get behind for a Texas team. There was a problem finding the identity because of the injuries to Shedrick, the injury to Dylan Dessou. When again, I said Dylan Dessou is probably the best player on this team, the most effective player on this team, most valuable player. You see when he comes out of games, how much worse that team is, and his plus minus is usually pretty good. It wasn't great last night, but his plus minus is usually pretty good. Dad, I think if you put Dylan Dessou out there and get him into foul trouble, that's a problem. So you can't be the most physical team in the league. So you have to find what your identity is for this Texas team going forward. You have now a long week. You've got Tuesday, you got today all the way to Saturday before your next game. And I know you got to keep playing hard teams. It's the Big 12. Every game is going to be a battle. Every game is going to be rough. But this is going to be a stretch for Texas where they're going to have to start to put it together and find their identity. Rodney Terry has a good group of guys, but they're not quite the group of guys that we may have thought they were at the beginning of the season. They're a team that still can compete in the Big 12. They can compete for a spot in the tournament. They don't seem like the biggest team. Again, we can go into the fact that Ron Holland deciding to go to the G League instead of college basketball is a pretty major setback when we look at the offense of this team and guys like IT Horton playing 20 minutes a game and not being able to produce offensively, which is what his forte is. Brock Cunningham's offensive ability going downhill. When we look at that bench and we look at basically your top four guys are Dessou, Dylan Mitchell, Max Abmas, and Tyrese Hunter. And Tyrese Hunter only added 5 to that as well. And then you have 3 points from IT Horton. You have 5 points from Kendall Weaver, 5 points from Brock Cunningham, and 5 points from Caden Shedrick. Kendall Weaver is going to continue to grow in that role. In the next few years, he'll get better and better at finishing at the rim, better and better at everything he does. Not really worried about him. IT Horton might be an issue because his offense has just not been able to find a place so far. He hasn't been able to get open and hit the shots when he gets open, because he either hits shots when he's kind of covered or he gets open and misses wide open ones. He's going to have to start figuring that out. But it was a wake-up call against Houston that you played a really good game and came up just a little bit short because of that inconsistency. Once again, inconsistency of the intensity and the energy that you put out there. That, one of the big pieces we saw last season was Sir'Jabari Rice coming off and being a leader. Not only the energy off the bench on the sideline, but a leader on the sideline. And you had, Marcus Carr could be a leader, and you had Timmy Allen kind of trying to be a leader. You had guys being leaders on the sideline. And with Brock Cunningham only playing 10 minutes a game, he's not going to be that guy. So you need Dylan Dessou to fall into that role. You really need Max Abmas to fall into that role, and I don't know if he has yet. He doesn't seem to be the guy in the timeouts and grabbing people and telling people and getting people pumped up and getting guys ready to go. I don't know if there's a leader on the court to get them ready to go. That's what you need in basketball, because a coach can yell at you all they want, but a coach is not necessarily going to get you pumped up to go back into the game. A coach is telling you what to do. They're giving you assignments. They're giving you spots that you're missing, plays that you need to run, guys you need to check, keep on. They're telling you when you double off of screens and when you trap off of screens and things like that, or when you're switching. That's more what the coaching is going to be. I'm not putting that on RT because that's not who RT is. And I think coaches who are going to get you amped up are probably not going to win you championships either. You need to have those guys on the court to do that. And I don't know if they've found that this season. Hopefully one of those guys on the bench will start to figure it out. One of those guys in this lineup for Texas will start to figure out how to be a leader on the court, how to be the guy that not trusting just Brock Cunningham to be that guy, to get the guys to grab him and tell him, yeah, man, let's go. Let's pick it up. Hey, man, don't let him box out. Box out. Get on the court. And when a guy gets knocked over, you pick him up and you say, box out next time. That kind of energy, I just haven't seen it from this Texas team a ton this season, and we saw it definitely rear its head last night against Houston. It's not an end-of-the-world situation. You were playing the number 4 team in the country, and you took them to overtime, and you had a shot, and you should have beaten this team. So we're not saying Texas is garbage. Like, I'm sure somebody will put on the text line again. They're not, because they're the number 4 team in the country. You are the underdog, even though you were at home. but it is a point where it was a really good measuring stick for Texas to see if they could do the things they needed to do to keep their offense alive when a team started to play physical and tough. And when the game got harder, they were able to do it, but they could not do it for two halves. They couldn't do it for 40 minutes. And neither team played well in overtime. So we'll just both teams were just dead tired by the time they got there with the energy they'd expelled already and the minutes everybody had played. But it ends up being a game that unfortunately comes down to missed free throws, to missed rebounds, and just a missed opportunity of a first half where you could have, if at some point you could have on the court turned it on and started to play a bit more physical and start to bump around and really start to realize what you had the opportunity to do. And it wasn't able to get done. And by the time they figured it out, it was just too late to overcome that amount of energy against a really, really good Houston team. We'll get to the text line in a minute. I see we've already got some texts coming in, and I'm sure we've got some people that are positive, some people that are negative, but we'll get to those in just a minute. We'll get to them. I do want to get to a couple other games in the Big 12 tonight to keep an eye on. Tonight we will get Texas Tech at TCU. Number 15 Texas Tech at number 25 TCU. This is another game for Texas Tech. That team is looking really good right now. They're one of the top 15 teams in college basketball in free throws, and this is a problem for TCU. They're a little bit sloppy a lot of times, and it doesn't necessarily clean up at home. They're averaging just over 13 turnovers a game. They foul a lot as well. So if this is a game where Texas Tech can just down the stretch get the turnovers they need and hit the free throws they need, this could be another big win for Texas Tech as they continue to build their resume. Oklahoma, number 23, Oklahoma is at Kansas State. This may be the game that helps knock out Oklahoma out of that top 25. Their preseason schedule built them up as they went undefeated in that, but didn't play a lot of big talent. K-State is the 22nd most efficient defense. That is something that gives Oklahoma problems. You play good defense on Oklahoma, they have a real hard time scoring. So Kansas State may put Oklahoma out of that ranked team list. There'll still be a quad one win for Texas, but it may knock them down as a win for Texas. There, you just have to keep winning. You have to keep winning if you're Texas, especially games you're supposed to win. And Oklahoma State at number 8, Kansas. This one should be a bounce-back game for Kansas, who's had some struggles on the road, but they are 10-0 at home this season. Oklahoma State is not one of the better teams in the Big 12. Everyone in the Big 12 is good, but this is not one of the better teams. So look for a Kansas win there tonight as well. Over in the NBA, the Spurs lost to the Wizards 118-113 last night. Cedi Osman off the bench had a good game, 20 points for there. Wemby goes for 22 points and 11 rebounds. Actually up to 31 minutes now. That minutes restriction for the ankle injury seems to be dying down. He made the Shooting Stars rookie game, so he'll be participating in that, getting a little bit more in there. But unfortunately, they could not get their third win in a row against a struggling Wizards team who's playing better with Keefe as their coach coming in after they made the move to move Unseld up to the front office. Jeremy Sohan in this game didn't have a great game. He's been playing a lot better. I'm not the biggest Jeremy Sohan fan. I've been on the record about that, but I will give him credit. He's been playing a lot better. Still a little too selfish for me. Too many times he holds on to the ball when he shouldn't be. He takes shots that are not basically the most advised shots and doesn't necessarily always look for the best in the team. He does lay on the floor too many times. He lets plays linger with him too much, but he's been playing better and better. And this game was one where it just fell off the rails. Ends up with 2 points, 4 rebounds. He goes 1 for 7. Just never really got it going. And that's, again, when you talk to these young players, it's about consistency. That's how you get into a starting lineup. And the Spurs were just short one of their big pieces where Sohan had been playing well as they started to win. If he starts to fall off, they don't have enough people on the bench to make up for one of their starters not playing well. The Rockets get a big win over the Lakers, 135-119. Jalen Green plays one of his best games of his career, 34, 12, and 7 in the game. Alperen Sengun, 31, 12, and 7 as well. The young guys taking it to this Lakers team with the energy. Jabari Smith Jr. returned. That's another big piece in there. And then we also saw Dillon Brooks doing Dillon Brooks things and hitting LeBron, and LeBron doing LeBron things by laying on the floor. It was just one of those moments in basketball where you saw these young stars in Jabari Smith and Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun, playing really good basketball for the Rockets, and then Dillon Brooks has to make it about himself, and LeBron has to make it about him. It was frustrating in a really good game. for the Rockets. But a big win and a bounce back win there. The Rockets have been struggling lately, but hopefully with Jabari Smith Jr. returning, that helps them. They're another team, just don't have a ton of depth. So when you lose a guy that has been playing good minutes for you, really hurts your chance to win some games here in the NBA. The NBA is tough to win games. We just know that. And the Mavericks get a big win, 131-129 over the Orlando Magic. Luka Doncic comes out again, 45, 9, and 15 for Doncic. Hardaway adds 36 points there. Paulo Banchero had a big game as well. Mavs down 16 in the third. They fight back into this game, and the Mavs get it. And after the game, Kidd says Luka is now better than Dirk Nowitzki. He says he's the best player in Mavs history. He's better than Dirk, and you should start talking about him in line with Michael Jordan. And I said one of those things may be true. I won't give it to him yet because he's 24 and in his sixth season and hasn't won a ring, and Dirk has a ring, which is going to give him benefit of the doubt. And also Dirk, neither one of them played much defense. Michael played some more defense than either one of them. But I'm not going to give him Dirk quite yet, just because he's only 6 seasons in. And Michael Jordan, he is way off of. That's a crazy statement to say this early. He is a scorer. As a scorer, probably as good as Michael Jordan, but he's a bulk scorer, and that's always one of those, you have to kind of look at and say, well, he's cost his team, and so can he get the winning records? Can he get to that next level? But that's a yeah. I'm not sure about that one. But I do want to ask you, for Mavs fans on here, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on Jason Kidd saying that he's the best Mav now and he's past Dirk Nowitzki. I'd also like to hear on the poll. Let's hit that sounder.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the Day on the Horn.
If we're going to put Luka Doncic up in that Michael Jordan era in the area, and then we have to look at some other players around the league who are playing well, Joel Embiid, Giannis, all those guys playing well. I want to ask you, and we look at Dirk Nowitzki in that conversation as well. If we want to say in Texas teams, Hakeem Olajuwon as well, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. Who is the greatest foreign player in NBA history? Who do you have on your list as the greatest foreign player? And it could be someone playing right now. It could be someone from the past. But who's the greatest non-American? So you can go Canadian as well if you want to pick one of the Canadians. I don't know if there's a Canadian that would be up there. Steve Nash is probably the best Canadian. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I'm just trying to rack my brain right now. But that's the question for you too. Who is the best foreign player in NBA history? That is the poll today. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get back, hit up the text line a little bit, get you some sound from Hook 'em Up with Ian Robbie, and keep the show rolling here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on Sports Complex here on the Horn, playing some of the biggest Grammy winners of all time. Beyonce atop that list, most Grammy wins of any artist ever. Jay-Z's on that list as well, both in this song. So we're playing prolific Grammy winners with at least double-digit wins in the Grammys all week long is our musical theme, since the Grammys are coming up on Sunday. You know, something you want to watch. If you're not going to be watching football on Sunday, you can watch the Grammys and realize how out of touch you are with music, like I do every year. Tune in and be like, I don't know who any of these people are, and I don't genuinely care that much. It makes me feel very old and very much like I'm sitting on the front porch telling kids to get off my lawn. It's half of my personality. The other half is me trying to be forgiving and a nice person. And then there's, it's just the duality of man right there. Text line is open 512-447-3776. Talking some college basketball and Texas' disappointing loss last night to Houston, as well as the poll of the day, who is the best foreign player of all time in the NBA. We're asking you that because Kid has now said Luka Doncic is above Dirk Nowitzki in the Mavs history, and he should be mentioned in the names like Michael Jordan. That's what he said last night after that 70-point win, or he said this yesterday, I guess, or at some point on a radio show. He didn't say it post-game. He said it on a radio show. So we'll get with that. If you have any of that, it's 512-447-3776. I'll get to a couple before we play the sound for me and Rob B. Texter says, Rodney Terry is his coach is a poor man's Shaka Smart and Texas coach. I think we're trying to say that he is a poor man's Shaka Smart, which he's about doing what Shaka did. So I don't know there. He's actually a better recruiter than Shaka. And I'm a fan of Shaka. Like, I like Shaka Smart. He didn't work well at Texas. He didn't recruit well here. He didn't really know the area never accepted him very well. And he wasn't able to get the type of star players, especially smaller players who could score a lot. He was really good at getting defensive players and defensive bigs, but that only gets you so far if you have that lineup. And that was kind of Chris Beard's thing. Is Chris Beard would get a lot of good defensive players, and then he'd get like one or two just offensive guys who would just score a bunch. And if those guys got hot at the right time, he could be really, really dominant. But that was kind of more of the Chris Beard. Shaka Smart never could get that other side of the equation. Rodney Terry is recruiting really well. Got Ron Holland. He was going to come here, and then the money started to talk that he was able to go to the G League. He probably didn't necessarily want to go to college, which I can get to. I was not a huge fan of going to school, so I can understand why some of these players may want to move on and just go, I'll play basketball all day, and I don't have to worry about the other parts. But I'm not comparing him to Shaka. I think if we want to go into it, he's closer to Rick Barnes because that's what he coached with a lot. And I know people don't want to hear that, but I think he's closer to that, where he's recruiting pretty well. He can get some star players to come in. If we look at the recruits he has coming into next year, he's got some really good young players coming in. Chris Johnson is going to be better as he gets better in this league. You were able to get top transfers. I think, it's a different game as well with the transfer portal, but, I'm not going to say a overtime loss to the number 4 team in the country again is, wow, what a terrible coach. Say, okay, this coach is getting guys. He's just not quite there, and I don't know if the talent is there on the team when you just don't have, really that fifth starter. And that's really kind of, if you could add one more piece to that equation that, could rebound well and could go in there and bring energy, and that's what those teams have. Houston has a fifth starter. In Texas with IT Horton, he just isn't that guy right now that you need him to be. That if IT Horton is hitting 50% from three and is able to get open and hit those big shots, then, Texas wins a lot more games because IT Horton adding, 9 points a game now changes a lot. And I just think that, you miss out on one where you watch him and he plays well and he's a really good offensive player elsewhere. He's just not hitting his shots at Texas. So you have to keep trying to figure that out. Texter says, was at the game. I loved everything about our intensity. I think Houston just got overmatched. Overmatched physically in a lot of areas. And as much as I like Rodney Terry as a coach, could somebody please explain that our offense it's not illegal to move without the ball, but you can set picks for guys who don't have the ball. I agree with that. There's points where that offense, and especially when people start playing tight on them, guys start standing around, and it drives me nuts too. And that's been a part of a lot of colleges' offensive schemes, especially because a lot of college, Rodney Terry wants to start building with the defense and then go to the offense. But at some point, you have to get to the offense. That's kind of what happened last season. Was the defense was built first, and then the offense came along. But the problem was the offense started to come along around this time last year, and then it really picked up that the offense was next level when they got to at the very end of the season. You play Kansas, you get in that Big 12 tournament. So there's still time to have a shot, but you really don't have much of a room with your tournament resume right now because you're not being able to win those games, and those losses to West Virginia and West Virginia loss especially is going to be a tough one to overcome as you keep going down the stretch, and the home losses, all of those things you're just going to have to start to try and overcome as you keep going through the season. All right, I want to play you some sound. We'll come back and get to the text line 512-447-3776. I want to play you some sound, a little NFL talk from our guys. Hook them up with Ian Rod B, a replay right here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019 AM 1260 and the Horn app and hornfm.com. We play these guys. They are on 6 to 11 right here on the Horn, and they're playing right now on a replay on the Sports Complex.
All right, just a couple of nuggets from championship weekend that I still want to get into and discuss. And I gave this little factoid earlier today, but it's still mind-blowing. The Ravens, and I always say to win games, you got to break tendency. So I'm not going to criticize Todd Monken too much for it because I do think they were trying to break tendency at the right time. But when it doesn't work, man, it's going to blow up in your face, and people are going to criticize the methods. But the Baltimore Ravens in that game versus Kansas City, they had the 6th lowest run rate, design run rate in the NFL all year long, all season long, playoffs included. Just to give you perspective to kind of contextualize it for you, there have been 568 NFL games played this season, including the playoffs. The Ravens' design run rate on Sunday versus Kansas City was 563rd. That means it was the 6th lowest of the season. So to me, that's intentional. I think that was them trying to break tendency, and it did not work. And the reason it didn't work is because Spagnuolo was fantastic in his game plan. He played 6 different personnel groupings defensively. I mean, they played 3-3-5. They played 3-2-6. You saw 4-1-6. I mean, they threw a ton of different looks at Lamar Jackson. And you could argue that if the adjustment by the Ravens should have been, all right, let's just go back to running the football. Honestly, it ain't that much different than what Texas did early on against Washington. And we all thought, hey, Texas is having some success. They should just run the football a little bit. The adjustment by the Ravens should have been just running the football, because it would have influenced Spagnuolo to have where you have been able to dictate their personnel grouping. The personnel grouping started to dictate what you were doing offensively instead of you dictating what the defense should have been doing. They were able to dictate you because your pass rate was so high. They threw all these exotic pressure packages at you, all these exotic personnel groupings. Well, if you're running the football successfully, trust me, teams just going to play. They'll play their base. They played their base too, but they'll just go back to their base. They'll go back to run-heavy defenses or run personnel groupings. And Baltimore didn't do that. Baltimore allowed Spagnuolo to really dictate the tempo of that game. And I think it started out, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think it started out with, hey, let's break tendency. And it was at 6th lowest run rate of the season. Definitely breaking tendency. Only 6 carries for the running backs, but it blew up in their face. And when it's at one point in the game, they should have been able to pivot because they didn't have to abandon the running game because they weren't down by a lot. If you ever abandon the running game when you're down 3 scores, hell, the 49ers didn't abandon the running game and they were down 17. They did not abandon the running game. So I think that probably is Todd Monken. That's his ultimate failure as a coach. He should have adjusted sooner and realized, all right, you know what? My game plan sucks. Game plan is not working. It's not working really well.
And you give the numbers, Rob, but just watching the game, every time Lamar Jackson dropped back over and over again, it looked like he wasn't sure what he was seeing.
He was never comfortable.
And that gives Spags credit there. Spagnuolo, he was making it cloudy. He was clouding the picture of what coverages he was going to be in. And, you could see, even on the touchdown pass to Zay Flowers, he scrambled for –
It was a extended play. It was like 7-8 seconds.
And go over to kind of backyard football at some level. But the initial read, he didn't get it. And, when he did throw it, because the Chiefs have such a great secondary, guys were tight. Guys were covered. Yeah. And again, not a Ravens fan. But watching the game, I'm thinking, why aren't you running the ball? why are you not running the ball? What are you doing? This game is there for you to win. And, obviously the Ravens fans will talk about Zay Flowers' fumble at the goal line, which was
That was
huge.
big. Yeah.
That's just a great individual play by L'Jarius Sneed, by the way, to punch that ball out. And then Lamar's interception. But, gosh, that right there where, come on, Nick, you're in then the high red zone. Pound the rock. Go pound this rock and go get this touchdown. But instead, it's a throw into triple coverage.
Yeah.
So you can put that on Lamar Jackson, absolutely. But at the same time,
That's
coach is
Todd
doing
Monken.
at that point of the game, you kind of knew the passing game was not clicking. And it's pouring down rain.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I didn't realize it was that egregious until I went back and looked at some of the numbers. And, yeah, that was probably their biggest coaching failure overall was the initial game plan was I think they were trying to break Tennessee. It didn't work. It doesn't always work. Try to break tendencies, and it doesn't always work. When it doesn't, you need to learn when to pivot. Let's pivot. They did not pivot.
And then, that on top of all the personal fouls and the gift yardage that they gave the Chiefs, who were much more buttoned up and much more poised in that moment. And that goes back to John Harbaugh, because John Harbaugh can get on the headset and say, Todd,
what are we doing here?
Coach Monken, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing? We've been we're the highest run rate team in the league this season. That's why we're the number one seed. What are we doing? Why are we not running the football more?
And the Chiefs they blitzed a ton. I believe it was a 44%, almost 45% pass blitz rate versus the Ravens. The season average for the Chiefs was around 32%. And they ran 2 6-man blitzes against the Dolphins, 4 against the Bills. They ran 8 of them, 6-man blitzes, which essentially means you're in zero coverage a lot of times against Lamar Jackson. So they want to get after him, but you wouldn't have a chance to get after him if they'd stayed ahead of the chains and run the ball more. So that's probably the biggest nugget reviewing the AFC title matchup. But you just got to give more credit to the Chiefs and what they did against the Ravens on the road. Talking about the 49ers and the Detroit Lions, I think obviously most of the conversation has been about Dan Campbell and his fourth down decisions. I think it's overall that third quarter where they had a meltdown. You're up 17 points, and in 9 minutes, the 49ers were able to come back and take the lead in that game. But something that's not talked about enough was it Badgley, the kicker? I didn't realize this either, and I think it's one of the things that Dan Campbell might have considered when he was making his decision, which I agree was a miscalculation. All right, you want to take them points and get the lead. You talked about that yesterday.
Take them points.
But the place kicker, do you realize how bad he is from outside kicking?
I didn't know.
Their place kicker, Mike Badgley, is in his career, he is 50% of his career outdoors from 45 to 49 yards. Hasn't made one since 2020. 76% for his career for 40 to 49 yards, 46% from 50 plus. The Lions converted 80% of their 4th and 3 or less all season long. San Fran allowed around 71% of their 4th and 3 or less all season long. And Michael Badgley hadn't attempted a kick outside. We talked about this because they're Dome Warriors since 2022. So I just throwing it out there. I'm not excusing the obviously the decision by Dan Campbell, but Michael Badgley was 9 of 20 in his career from 48 plus yards. That's one of the worst numbers among kickers. He might have been looking at his kicker too.
Yeah, well, that's
might
a
kick
fair
her outside.
point.
This is not guaranteed for him to make it.
Well, I said that yesterday. I mean, they're human beings playing, and you can't guarantee the field goal either.
Yeah.
And now those numbers.
I'm not justifying his decision. I'm just saying, I think that might also have been part of the calculation.
Well, sure. If he's 50% outdoors and you get the third down, fourth downs 80% of the time, that's the analytics that would tell you go for it. And that's why, as we had the good debates yesterday about it, I mean, the third quarter one I still disagree with, but it's defensible. I will never agree that with 7 minutes to play, you don't tie the ball game.
No, that was.
Or try to tie the ball game. That just gave all the momentum in the world to San Francisco. They went down and scored again, so then you were down
Agreed.
10. But, one of the things we didn't talk about enough yesterday, Rod, was the timeout that he cost them. And it was not just him, but it was Ben Johnson. When they were at the goal line and had 3 timeouts and they were trying to score to make it a 3-point game, and they ran the ball, and they had to use the timeout.
That was brutal.
That was a brutal decision.
You know what? That was, and we don't get on Ben Johnson enough for that. That was terrible. That's a terrible call.
Well, as soon as you
didn't
waste
a timeout after that,
and then you were going to have to rely on the onside kick at that point.
We don't talk enough about that. That was a horrible call, and I don't know if that was Ben Johnson or Dan Campbell saying we can run. I don't know where
You
that
can't
came
run the
from.
ball there.
You can't run the ball there.
You can't run the ball.
Even if you are predictable, so whatever it is, you can't run the ball there, man.
You can't. You either have to. And Jared Goff can't take a sack, and you can't run the ball. 'Cause
And if
the
you're gonna
clock-
run it, you better score.
you have to. but you just can't run it. I mean, you can't take the risk. You have to run a play that ends with an incomplete pass.
You just said it, their risk, and it all blew up in their first. This is a team that had relied
That
heavily
timeout
on
was
risk.
so valuable.
Oh man,
That timeout was enormous to their potential to come back and win that game. And I'd also say
I
that
forgot about that one.
and it was like we remember when we all remember the Longhorns playing Washington in the Sugar Bowl. Right, they had the ball at the 11-yard line, but they didn't have any timeouts. So every play had to go into the end zone. And the one little swing pass they threw was just to get out of bounds and keep the clock from stopping. You just knew you couldn't get tackled and get bounds, or the game was going to end, essentially. And that's where, gosh, you got to know the clock at that point. Dan Campbell.
You're right.
I think he was trying to surprise party because the Niners will never think we're going to run the ball.
Yeah.
But you can't be wrong on
I
that.
would say you can't blame Dan Campbell because Ben Johnson is the play caller, but he has veto power because he's the head coach. He can go, hell no, guys, we throwing it. What do you mean? I heard that play. Whoa, no.
And it was just a
we
basic-
throw it. We throw it. Just so you know, give me a pass play.
Yeah,
we're not
something
running
for
it.
Jared.
So he can always intervene and veto, and that's on Dan. So Dan Campbell, he could have given his team a strategic tactical advantage. He did not. I think that is pretty obvious, but that's a great point. We hadn't talked about that, and we didn't bring it up yesterday because there were a lot of calls. And also, I'll throw this out there to Ben Johnson too. When you had that fourth down call and they threw it to Josh Reynolds and he dropped it,
Yep.
that should have been to your Amon St. Brown. You gotta have your money player catching that. You gotta design a player for your money
Can't
guy.
throw it to the Aggie. No.
Well, no, but that's why I ended up dropping it because that's not your money guy.
Yeah, he's got the highest drop rate on that team, Josh Reynolds.
Exactly. Him or Laporta. I mean, those are your money guys.
Good stuff there from E and Rod B. Hook 'em up weekday morning 6 to 11 right here on the Horn. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will get to the text line 512-447-3776. If you want to sound off about any NFL talk, any NBA talk, or college basketball on the Longhorns' disappointing loss last night, or you want to answer our poll question of the day. Jason Kidd said that Luka Doncic is better than Dirk Nowitzki and should be in the same conversation as Michael Jordan. Who is the best foreign player of all time in the NBA? Send in that text as well. 512-447-3776. Take a break. When we come back, we'll get to those texts right here on the Sports Complex. The Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back in Sports Complex here on a Tuesday afternoon, playing Grammy artists with more than 10 Grammy wins. Alison Krauss on that list. This is some Alison Krauss and Robert Plant. Couldn't resist. I know she's done a lot of other things, but if you're going to put her with Robert Plant, that's what I'm going to play on my show. Playing that all week long. Text lines open 512-447-3776 is the text line number for you guys to chime in. Let me know what you're thinking about the week in sports. Also, our poll of the day, who is the greatest foreign athlete in the NBA, foreign player in the NBA? Lots of great people to pick from, but there's a lot, there's MVPs now. We haven't had an American-born MVP in quite a while now. So, we put there, but this is because Jason Kidd said Luka Doncic is better than Dirk Nowitzki. I want to see if this riles up Mavs fans or not. Not being a Mavs fan, it doesn't really rile me up. At being an older guy, it riles me up because I'm thinking, no, not that. He's 24. He's 24. You can't give him that yet. But as a Spurs fan, so I don't notice that as much. Let's get back to the text line 512-447-3776. Texter says, the Big 12 is really, really, really good. I think next year this team will be in a better spot. They will be also getting some good recruits. If everybody stays and everybody comes in, have some good recruits, you'll be able to go back into the transfer portal and see who's out there. Now you lose Max Abmas and Dylan DeSue next year, so that is going to be a big hole to fill. Those two players are just going to be really hard to replace, especially Dylan DeSue is going to be really hard to replace. But there are some good young players coming in for this Rodney Terry team. We'll see who he gets in the transfer portal as well. It also says, do people forget this is Coach Rodney Terry's first full year? We got to relax a little bit. No, I know. And in reality, I think there is a line for a lot of people in college basketball, just because the game changes so much that people aren't aware of how much it shifts of, when the NBA made the rule of the, high school players could come straight out and that changed the game, to then the one and dones and how that changed the game. And now the transfer portal, how that's changing the game. When you look at all those, and people just go, well, if he hasn't been in a national championship game, if he doesn't have a ring, hasn't been in the national championship game, or at least a Final Four, he's the worst coach that's ever coached in all college basketball. They got to make a run. And if it's my team that made the run last year and they were in the Elite Eight, no credit. No credit for that. So it has to be a run where you took someone that was not a top team and you made them get up there. I don't know the criteria, but it always seems like there's this weird backwards mentality of this is how this guy's so great. And then if you actually look at the resume, you're like, yeah, he's a good coach, but he's not necessarily that much better than anybody else. He's not putting you up there. Dexter says they're an NIT team. They're a tournament team. They're going to, you had the number 4 team in the country and you went to overtime. They are a tournament team. Now they're not a high-seeded tournament team. And if they don't finish out the season strong, they will miss the tournament. But they're good enough to be a tournament team for sure. And he says, not garbage. And Spurs are garbage. Pop needs to retire. You're not watching the Spurs. They're getting better with Pop. So you're just not watching that. Akeem and Dirk and the Greek Freak. I said, who's the best, though? You got to give me one. You got to listen to the assignments. You got to give me one. Who is the best foreign player in the NBA of all time? Not just naming them. I know who they are. But you got to give me one. Give me one. And Jason Kidd, overrated player and coach. Really good player. I won't say he's overrated as a player, but as a coach, possibly he's overrated. And Rick Barnes, the last good coach we had, and I guarantee all you guys still wanted to get him fired too, because he had those runs where he would have it, and then we have to rebuild for a couple seasons, and everybody says he should be fired, and then he'd come back and do well again, and everybody go, oh, Rick Barnes, what a great coach. And then eventually that's what got him ousted here in Texas. He, had a couple bad years, and everybody wanted him out again. Chan says, in the first half, when the threes weren't falling, why didn't our players go close to shoot close to the basket? Do they have a self-check mechanism or self-awareness? I'm asking, never played basketball competitively. All right, Chan, we got to hit a break here at the top of the hour. When we come back, I'll address that, because there is a reason they weren't. It's not the best reason, but there was a reason they weren't, and they addressed it in the second half. But we'll get to that when we come back on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Hour 2 on the Sports Complex here on the Horn. We'll get into some NFL talk as well as more college basketball talk, I'm guessing, on this text line. Our poll of the day, talking about the best foreign player in NBA history. Send that one in 512-447-3776. We got some coaching NFL news that came out before the show, so we'll talk about that. And Jerry Jones. I'll get you a little clip of Jerry Jones. Just if you've forgotten that the Cowboys exist, if you've been trying to put that deep down in your subconscious that that's a thing, then we'll ruin that for you today. Here on Hour 2 of the Sports Complex. Let's get back to the text line for a minute. We'll hit that for a second, then we'll go talk some NFL, and we'll come right back to it. How about that? But I told you, Chan, right before the break, he asked the question, when the threes weren't falling in the first half, why didn't our players get closer to shoot the basketball? Do they have a self-check mechanism or self-awareness? I'm asking, never play basketball competitively. The reality of why the team was having so much problems moving the ball closer, getting to the rim, getting to the paint, or just getting past the three-point line were a couple things. One, when they were setting screens, you're normally used to getting a little bit of space on a screen. They were trapping off of the screens, and they trap well. Houston does really well. If you play really good defensive basketball, it's a lot of footwork and staying in your stance enough that there's no real room to move around, where if you're going to get past, there's going to be some contact, and you have to hope that you're going to hold on to the ball well enough, and you're going to either get the call if you fall over or if the ball comes loose. And a lot of times you don't necessarily want to take that risk. So they were doing that, and they were having good pressure out on the perimeter, but a lot of it was those traps off the screen that Texas wasn't ready to deal with to just find the guy. They got better at rolling on that, but a lot of times the players just weren't ready to make that pass, and by the end of the clock, you would get down to it, and they didn't feel they could make the move down low. I think you just kind of have to lower your shoulder a little bit and get pushed in there. That's not necessarily that's not Max Abmas' that's not his game. We saw him make the cut at the end. They did a better job of moving on everything and not waiting for plays to develop. When they were waiting for things to happen, they would get caught and get pushed back more. They did a much better job in the second half of continuing to push the action themselves, and that put them in a better position to find a guy, find a cutter, find something of that effect to allow them to be able to get some points going in the second half and raise up that field goal percentage, because they were getting much heavier looks. Because if you're getting trapped, it means that somebody's wide open. So you just have to find a way to get there, and there'll be mismatches off of that. And there's ways to exploit that. There's a reason not every team does that, because when you do it, you're taking a big risk. Texas just didn't get into it because the intensity wasn't up. That, if you, in the first half, if that happens a couple times and you basically push your way through it, you're going to get through a lot of those. They're going to stop doing it. Texas didn't want to push through early on. Again, that was because I.T. Horton and Max Abmas come from schools where you don't do that as much. And I don't think they did it to the level they needed to in this game early on. They went back to the locker room. I'm sure Rodney Terry, he's talked about this before, about showing him footage at halftime, and he may have showed him stuff and gone, look, I'll show you how open. There's 3 guys open when you get the ball right here, and then you stop and you let the defense reset, and then you try and start over. You can't let the defense reset because it puts Texas in such a bad position. That happened a lot in the first half. They were much better about it in the second half. Another text. Bevo Angel says, best foreign player, NBA player was Manu Ginobili. Team guy, came off the bench with crazy leg energy, scored points, and played defense and was clutch late in games, not to mention how durable he was. Perfect role player from the Spurs championship dynasty team and has the rings to prove it. I'm with you. I think Manu is up there on that list. I'm not going to say he's the best. I think in his prime, he was close in his prime. The problem was he came over a little bit later, took him a little bit to develop, and by the time he got there, he was playing on the bench, and he was playing with 2 other Hall of Fame players, so he never really got to shine at that top level where he was the guy. So I'm not going to put Manu atop my list of best foreign players, but I am a huge, huge Manu Ginobili fan. Texter sends in a gif of Clint Eastwood saying, "Get off of my lawn." Yeah, that's somewhat me. I don't wear my pants as high as Clint Eastwood. I haven't gotten to that age yet. You'll say DCM. I do not know what DCM means. So someone will have to fill me in on what that acronym is. I am not sure about that one. Dexter says last night, the Longhorns had all the opportunities to win the game last night, even after getting bullied on the boards. The turnovers and the end regulation was a killer. We had opportunity to take the last shot, and low basketball IQ kicks in. RT would have preferred to pull it out if you don't have an uncontested layup. We have to start playing smarter. They are playing harder, making it, but still making poorly timed mistakes. He needs dogs, grown men in the post that fight for everything. That's what the U of H has, everything, even in the young players. And I can tell you, I will tell you straight up, if Texas tried to put together a team like Houston, Texas fans would revolt because they're not necessarily a lot of fun to watch. And if you get a bunch of 6'7" guys and go in there and play hard, it's not fun basketball to watch a lot of times. It works and you can go well, but we'll see if Houston's able to do it in the playoffs. Right now, LJ Cryer is playing not great offensively. Like, Sheed is playing pretty decently offensively, but the rest of those offensive players aren't playing well enough for them to make a run in the tournament right now. If they start hitting their shots, then anything's possible. But that's not as well as Houston is what they can do, especially in the regular season, it may not constitute, because if you get calls in a game where they start calling you for fouls, you're out of the tournament in one game. So you do need a little bit more finesse if you're trying to be that team. I think RT is not going to be that guy either. And yeah, there's going to be mistakes. It's college basketball. I don't know if there is a team in college basketball who's not a mistake, that doesn't make mistakes. They're 21, 22-year-old kids. It is, and I mean, the NBA, it is too. I know it's annoying and I know it's frustrating. You want to limit them, but yeah, I'm not going to be as mad about that one. Of the last thing, like Kendall Weaver when he made that pass, it sucks. But I also know Kendall Weaver will make way more good plays for Texas than bad ones, and I'll have the foresight to not kick him out of school for one bad play where it sucks. But you're gonna have to move on from that one. Akeem Olajuwon, the best. Akeem's up there. Akeem is definitely up there on the list. From Nigeria, Akeem Olajuwon didn't start playing basketball until he was like 14 or so, I think. And then, of course, all those guys are like 7-footers, and they're like, yeah, you should probably play basketball. Might change your life. My man Nate says, Dirk, I was born in 1980, waited so long for 2011. Luka has no chance anytime soon with this team, or Luke Longley. I don't think Luke Longley is going to get up there. I don't know if he's going to make my list. I don't know if Luke Longley can pass the guys who have won MVPs in the league recently. I don't know if he's going to beat that. But when Dirk meant to, and that's the question is too. It's like for Mavs fans, you're like, what sentimentally Dirk meant for this team versus what Luka means, which is great, but it doesn't necessarily, like, he's on that edge where I don't know the team you build around Luka. I don't know if it's feasible to build that team in 2024 of the Michael Jordan team of, hey man, we need everyone who can hit every single shot when you get it. You're going to get 3 shots a game. That's it. And we need you to play hardcore defense. And if not, Luka's going to punch you. Like, I don't know if you can build that team in 2024. And that's kind of what guys like Trae Young and Luka Doncic and those guys who want to be bulk scorers, it's really hard to have a bulk scorer, a bulk shooter win NBA championships, especially consistently, because it's just, you're playing against the odds that bulk shooting will give you, you're gonna come up short enough that it's going to be a problem. And that's what it's constant. That's one of those problems with Luka. And Dirk was never really bulk, and they added other people, and he would pass the ball and he'd get his assist. I think Luka gets his assist and he gets his rebounds. He looks really good, but he's just too much usage rate. If you lower that and use him and use prime Luka in the right spots, then it opens up a lot more things. All right, let's talk a little NFL, and we'll come back to the text talking basketball. If I can find my show sheet that I have written down things what we're going to talk about. We don't have too much NFL to talk about today. We don't have to go in. We played that sound earlier from Hook 'em Up, talking a little bit more about the Chiefs and how the Ravens didn't run the football, which we talked about yesterday. You didn't run the football. You broke tendency way too hard. And the 49ers and the Lions and the calls. And I think Rod did bring up a good point, though, that their field goal kicker, I bet you they changed that in the offseason. But a couple points to bring up, and then we'll talk a little Cowboys, and we'll get back to the text line. But first news today, we saw Ben Johnson, who was a favorite for Seattle and for the Commanders. I believe the Commanders picking away. He is not taking a head coaching job. He will stay the offensive coordinator of the Lions. He has said he wants to bring a Lombardi trophy to Detroit. He wants to bring one. He wants to win one with Dan Campbell. He is faithful to this team. He is loyal to this team. And reports are, as of right now, there's no money extension for him as well, that they did not offer him more money to come back. Now, there are reports that he had a really high asking price, that if he was going to go take this on, he apparently really wanted either a lot of years or a lot of money and a lot of concessions to basically say, I need you to trust me I want you to put your money where your mouth is, and I don't want to show up here and then in 9 months you come looking at me and wonder why I haven't been able to turn around the Commanders of the Seahawks and make you Super Bowl contenders. I think he wanted those, especially if it was Commanders, where he was rumored to be the lead candidate. But he will be staying with the Lions. It is great for Detroit. That is a big get to keep some consistency, keep Jared Goff with a coach that knows him and knows how to get him to play well. Jahmyr Gibbs looked really good. Another year in this offense for him. David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, all those people, Sam Laporta, to be able to keep that offense kind of in check and keep it growing is a big step for Detroit. And Dan Campbell came out today, and he said it was true. What it was true. Hey, we have to start over and go back and win because there's no guarantee we ever make it back to here again. We have to work twice as hard. We have to start over because if we think that we're owed this, we're never making it back. And so they're going back, but the fact that Ben Johnson's coming back, the question will be Mike Macdonald or Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator. Mike Macdonald's with the Ravens. Aaron Glenn, if he gets a job, he's not really the favorite in Seattle or Washington, but Washington did talk to him a lot. So does Washington call Aaron Glenn now and try and bring him back and try and bring in some of that Detroit blood, and they don't get their guy, but they maybe get their second choice. Mike Macdonald is still thought of as the favorite in Seattle, but I've not heard anything come down. If you have, let me know on the text line if that is happening. Also, the Pittsburgh Steelers have hired Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator. I really don't know how I feel about this because my initial reaction is that's a great hire. My initial reaction is looking at him as just an offensive coordinator, not a head coach, not the person who's going to be in charge of personnel, not the person in charge of the person who is going to be able to go in there and have Mike Tomlin over the top of him. And that coach, I think Arthur Smith could do a really good job of bringing the Pittsburgh style of football, that tough, tough run the ball. You've got two good running backs. We know what he did with an Alabama running back. When he was with Tennessee, he made Ryan Tannehill a usable quarterback. If you're able to get that, if you're able to make George Pickens into what you want to make him, what he was having with the success he had with A.J. Brown, if you're able to continue to make those pieces step up like he did in Tennessee, then that's a great hire. I think there's concern because of what we saw in Atlanta that now everybody in their fantasy drafts are going to be drafting every backup in Pittsburgh. And if you're drafting the 4th and 5th wide receiver in Pittsburgh, I don't blame you. I see what the trend was in Atlanta, but I think there's parts of it where he may have different say. It's a much different run organization in Pittsburgh as it is in Atlanta. I think it's a good hire. I think it's a good hire to bring him in. And finally, Jerry Jones spoke to the media today, and there was two things he said. One was him defending Mike McCarthy, and the other was saying, we're going to go all in 2024. We are not even thinking about the future. We're moving. Well, I've been talking about the reason why Jerry Jones will never win a Super Bowl is because he will never go all in. He, in January, is saying he's going all in. He, in January, is promising to make the difference and that all those old times and I'm a different man now than I was then, and now we're going all in. I don't buy it for a second, but we'll see if his actions meet what he does. If he makes trades during the draft, does he make trades or does he just re-sign Dak and that's going all in? I don't know. Does he just re-sign his players and that's going all in? I don't know, but he's saying he's going all in. He also spoke about why he decided to keep Mike McCarthy. Here's some Jerry Jones sound for you of why Jerry Jones, where he's at with the team and why they're keeping status quo, at least for now.
What I would say is I hope it's not different going into the first playoff game where we've got the second seed. I hope it's not different at all to that point where we got the second seed. Okay, now let's talk about how we might make it different against when we play in that game and get a win. Okay, we need to stop the run better. And we need to be more physical, and we need to run better. Be specific. We need to do those kinds of things. And so my point is, I look at that, and I look at. I thought we made a pretty good move 4 years ago when we hired Mike McCarthy, and he's had some great in-season success. Now he's come up short three times and advanced us in the playoff. Okay, but I like the fact that he's hanging around the rim, and I like what the team has done to hang around the rim. So I think what the answer that I would have is that I'm aware that we're hanging around the rim. We're not getting the ball in, but we're hanging around the rim. Let's don't discount hanging around the rim and where we are right now with the players we've got. And I'm thinking about it from the whole look. The real question is I'm not doing what I was doing 30 years ago. I'm not doing what I was doing 20 years ago on a personal basis. I think about a lot of things differently. That's important because if I were doing the very same things over the last 30 years, 20 years, okay, then unless you looked at the whole report card, the report card you're seeing about winning in the playoffs, I don't like. There's some other parts of the report card that you don't have privy to that you might like.
There's other things in the report card you don't have privy to that you might like. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means the money or whatever else it means, but apparently we would like that in the report card of Jerry Jones over the past few seasons. But Jerry now says it's coming out of that is he's changed. He is continuing to morph as a general manager and an owner of a franchise, and he's going to go all in this season. And he also said he really liked that Mike McCarthy was hanging around the rim. Do those words give you any encouragement, Cowboys fans? Did that make you feel anything, or is this just another segment of Jerry Jones' January talk? And once we get to the draft, he'll draft his players. He'll make a big story. I'll still say he drafted Deuce Vaughn because he wanted to be on TV, and he knew that was a story, and they had the documentary cameras. And it's not a shot at Deuce Vaughn. I think Deuce Vaughn has a lot of potential to be a good running back and a good change of pace back and some special lineups. I'm not taking a shot at Deuce Vaughn. I think they had way other needs at running back than Deuce Vaughn, and they drafted him because they thought, oh, this will be a great story, and we'll get on there and it'll raise the visibility of the Cowboys again. And if you're going to do that, then you can't ever tell me that you're trying to win a Super Bowl, because you're not doing everything to win a Super Bowl if you're trying to get on TV first, or you're trying to get on a documentary and you're trying to have the best viral moment. If you want that, then don't tell me you're trying to win a Super Bowl. So we'll see. We'll have to wait till draft night probably to see if they make a trade, to see if they go. Like, look at what the Texans did last year. They had accumulated picks, and then they traded for the second and then traded up to get the third to get the players they wanted. They went for it, and they got up, and they made it to the playoffs. They made a run. They made a big step forward. Can the Cowboys make a step forward? I know we can say it's coaching and a little other small pieces what they need, but can they make those steps forward? Can they progress further? Now, we said you got to stop the run and you got to be able to run the ball. We know that, Jerry, but can you do that? Can you go out? Are you going to sign a running back this year? Or are you not? Or are you just going to say, Tony Pollard, we like our guys? Is this a whole thing to say we're bringing back Zeke and he's big enough to run the ball? He's going to be the refrigerator Perry? He's going to be defensive tackle and running back? Is that the plan? We're bringing back Hankins, and he'll be healthy this year, so that'll fix it. Mozzie Smith, we're going to tell him to go eat over the offseason. We'll be good. I until I see it, I don't believe it from Jerry Jones. But Cowboys fans, let me know what you think about Jerry saying that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back, get back to the text line, 512-447-3776. Keep letting me know what's up on the text line. We'll get to those texts. We come back here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn. Don't want to ever turn down Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder, part of our Grammys week, playing artists who have won double-digit Grammys, as the Grammys are on Sunday. Never want to turn down Stevie Wonder. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, we'll get back to text line. 512-447-3776. Got a good text here. Patrick, I'm a men's basketball season ticket holder. Great scene last night, but you have talked about this before, and I think it was Nick Shuley who brought this up last week. This isn't a great overall roster. The staff added some nice pieces from the portal last year, but I don't believe they looked at overall roster management. This is the problem. This team had a tough time scoring in half-court sets. They do find scoring with energy off the break, but this team has difficulty finding offense. All right, so there's a couple points. And I agree with you. And this is partly a young staff trying to figure out how to go into a world where you went into the offseason and you didn't know if Dylan DeSue or Dylan Mitchell or Tyrese Hunter were going to be coming back or not. You knew you were losing Marcus Carr and Christian Bishop and Timmy Allen and Serge Jabari Rice. You were losing a big piece of your team, but you don't know if you're losing the whole team that goes to the Elite Eight or pieces of it. And so you're trying to figure out, how do I bring guys in to rebuild, but I don't know how many pieces, and I'm going to bring in a Caden Shedrick, who I'm hoping, if Dylan DeSue is gone, can kind of step into that role. But if he's not, or maybe he'll play with him with Dylan Mitchell. If Dylan Mitchell leaves, or you had the line of the transfer portal and when you have to go and get these guys versus when guys are making their picks to go to the draft doesn't necessarily line up in a way that helps in roster management. They'll get better with that as teams do. But like Chris Ogden is now the general manager. That's a guy, because in today's game, you need more help of more people kind of keeping an eye on what everybody's doing and trying to think of the forward. So roster management is true. It's something you have to keep working on. And as far as half court, that's what Max Abmas was supposed to be. Max Abmas was supposed to be a solid 20-25 in the half court. And he just hasn't worked out that way every game. Some games he has, but against really tough defenses, he's had more trouble. And that's another part is talent. You're trying to go and judge who you're going to find out there, where you get a Kendall Weaver, and it's a great find because he's a young player. He's got a ton of energy, and he's ahead of expectations. You get a Zarek Onyema, who Rodney Terry knows, and he's just having a hard time playing with the basketball IQ he needs to play with. When he gets down there, when he's overmatched physically at points and overmatched athletically, it's kind of harder for him to make the right decision at points, so he's not necessarily getting in the games. Plus, with Brock Cunningham ahead of him playing 9 minutes, it's hard to get in there. So you're trying to build the roster in a way that it's difficult to do in today's game. And what really helps is a team like North Carolina that was able to keep some key pieces like R.J. Davis or Purdue, who's at the top right now, who kept Zach Edey. And if you're able to keep and know these guys are coming back and they come back and you're rebuilding your team, then it's a lot easier. For Texas, they lost a lot of production, and the production they brought back in is good, but they didn't know exactly what they needed, and it's a young staff trying to figure it out. They're going to have to continue to grow on that. The good news is nobody really knows how this NBA and the G League now, and they had Ron Holland coming in. That was part of their plan, was Ron Holland, who's playing in the Shooting Stars NBA All-Star Weekend for the G League. So that's part of it. Is that's another wrinkle that wasn't there 2 seasons ago that you're now dealing with. Hey, you recruited the number 1 recruit in America? Cool. He's not going to college anymore. That wasn't a problem 3 years ago. So all of those things kind of added up together to snowball into this team not being 100% what you need it to be. However, that doesn't take away from the players on the court. That doesn't take away from the coaches. It doesn't take away, there isn't it's not black and white of this is the number 1 team in the country or this is the worst team who's ever played basketball, fire everyone, get rid of all the players, and next year somehow we'll be the best team in the country. I don't get I get you can be upset about it. I don't get calling it garbage. I just don't like that. But that's for me. But I do agree with you. The player management and building it, that's going to have to continue to grow. We'll see what they do in the transfer portal because, again, this year you're losing I.T. Horton, you're losing Tyrese Hunter, you're losing Max Abmas, you're losing Dylan DeSue, you're losing Dylan Mitchell, you're losing Brock Cunningham. I mean, look at this. This is what you get. You may get Kendall Weaver back, so you get 25 minutes of playing time last night. And then Caden Shedrick, if he's back, I think he's still got another year of eligibility. I could be wrong on that, but I think he's got another year. If he comes back, you get less than a full 40 minutes of playing time back next season. That's where you're going to have to rebuild this roster is next season. You're probably bringing back, 35 to 40 minutes a game of playing time. And they just weren't, I think they were thinking, well, this may be a little bit of a down year. And the guys came back. And so they tried to scramble to make it another competitive team. Because if Dylan Dessou and Dylan Mitchell and Max Abmas, doesn't come or he's not coming because they're not competitive. And if all those guys and Tyrese Hunter, they all go to the NBA or go on to the next level, then this Texas team doesn't have Max Abmas. You're rebuilding. Chris Johnson's playing. All those young guys are playing right now. And you're rebuilding, and it's a different look of a team. And they probably went out in the transfer portal and tried to bring in more sophomores and juniors. They brought in older guys because they were trying to win now. You just have to keep figuring that out. But that's a new wrinkle in today's game that everyone's trying to figure out. But a great text there. I appreciate that from you there. Going back to the poll of the day, who's the best foreign player of all time? We get another Akeem. Locksmith Ryan says Joker has to be one. Yes, Jokic has to be. I mean, you're talking about possibly still the best player in the NBA. I know Joel Embiid is taking over right now in the spotlight. He is putting up huge numbers, but Jokic is right there with him. And apparently Embiid doesn't want to play against him. It's what we keep seeing. Another one says the Dream 100%. I mean, Akeem's up there. And look, as a Spurs fan, I watched him enough to know he's up there. Chan says Akeem Olajuwon, best low post moves, great ball handling, and great balance. He played soccer before basketball. Yes, he did. He played soccer before basketball, and then by the time he's like 15, 16, he was like, oh, no, this is the sport I'm going to play. Arborhorn 81 says best foreign player, Akeem the Dream. Only player I ever saw block Jabbar's skyhook, elite at both ends of the court, and he won championships, Arborhorn 81. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think you guys are pretty on the nose that Olajuwon is up there. It would be so much fun to watch him play against Giannis and play against Embiid and play against Joker, like that new generation, because he was so ahead of his time of, where you had the players like, Patrick Ewing was kind of more the stereotypical what you wanted in a low post player. And then, you get a Shaq who is dominant underneath, but doesn't necessarily have the finesse that Akeem had and the moves that Akeem had. Mark from Taylor wants to come in, Hayden. I was going to send a text, but my hand cramped up again. And Nate says, no need for that, Patrick. I'd much rather hear about monkeys and glory holes. We know Jerry likes to talk about his glory holes. Sorry for playing you Jerry sounds. Another, he means cash and not encouraged talking about Jerry Jones. Texas says, I didn't go for a long time during COVID myself. And saying you're talking about the dentist. Yeah, go check out Dr. Greg Eichert. Great people. And believe me, it was longer than COVID that I've been to the dentist. Dexter says a bunch of times, if Terry can't win at home, he will be gone. I don't think he's going to be gone after this year. And if he is, that's a dumb move. I mean, I know you're basically rebuilding the roster again this year, but to give a coach 1 year and in a really hard conference, and he's not been terrible. I get you beat Baylor at home last weekend, by the way. You did beat the number 9 team in the country in the home last weekend. You lost 2 games you shouldn't have lost. You shouldn't have lost to Tech. And you should have, but Houston, you're the number 4 team in the country. You went to overtime. That's not a fireable offense. And I don't think you want to completely rebuild your staff and do all that in basketball when I think you're okay with keeping Rodney Terry another year and trying to let him rebuild it. Especially because you do have really good recruits coming in and you don't want to risk losing all of those because you're going in and rebuild. You'd like to have your young guys come out. And that lineup is going to look different next season for sure. Watching this team, I don't see anyone that's going to make it in the NBA. Look, this is like the NFL. In college and pro basketball are 2 different games, and you're going to get up there. Dylan Mitchell will play in the NBA because of his athleticism and his size, and he's going to be able to get in there. I don't know if he's ever going to be a top guy, but look at I can't think of his name now. Power forward that played for Texas, that plays for the Knicks, who I should think of his name because I saw him play up close and personal over and over again. I don't know why I can't think of his name now. But he is, I'm sure someone can text me in if the power forward that played for Texas under Shaka for 4 seasons from Minnesota. I know where he's from, and I can't think of his name right now. That played but he plays for the Knicks now. And he was a guy that was somebody that you were really looking for, that after his freshman season, everybody thought that he was going to be the guy and go in there and play big minutes in the NBA. It never quite worked out that way. Jericho Sims. I don't know why I couldn't think of that name. Jericho Sims. But he ends up playing in the NBA, and he plays really well because he follows a role and goes into it. What you're looking with Dillon Mitchell, he's never going to be an elite scorer, but for somebody that can come in and they say, well, we can teach you how to shoot. We are really good at that. We have the time and the patience to teach you how to shoot in the NBA. We'll teach you how to shoot the basketball. We just need you to go in there and rebound, which he did rebound well last night. There was missed blockouts, but that's, with growth. Again, he's a very young person. He will get older and he'll get better basketball IQ and he'll get better at the game. Dillon Mitchell will play at that next level. Dylan DeSue also can play at a higher level. The question will be how much he can fit into an NBA with the skill set he has. How much can he play off of the ball? Max Abmas and Tyrese Hunter are going to be harder because of their size. So that'll be a question if either one of those guys ever really get there. I think Max Abmas may get a shot or two because of his scoring ability, but not sure if he's going to stick around. Tyrese Hunter is going to have to work the hard way defensively to get into the league and improve that three-point shooting at that NBA level to be able to get in. But no, I do think Dillon Mitchell especially will be drafted next season. He was going to be drafted this season. Dylan DeSue is an interesting case because he's a really good player. And I get you can get upset about it and say they're not drafted. But again, this is someone who's covered NBA for 20 years. Those guys are NBA talents. They're not necessarily star NBA talents. We're not going to go against them and say, well, they're going to be going up against Jokic every night and going at him. But again, we talk in that Jericho Sims range of a guy who gets another contract with the Knicks because he does a lot of things really well. And they like him. Let's see. Yes, Jericho Sims. I appreciate you guys texting that. I could not think of that name for the life of me. Dragan Petrovic. Yes, it was very good. He was nasty before he passed. I agree with that 100%. Ronnie Terry is a Jag. I don't think we'll fire him, but 2 years from now, we're all going to go, that guy was a Jag. Again, who, you guys keep saying this, and I know I've asked, and you guys have given me names of coaches who weren't going to come. You told me the Purdue coach who was going to leave Zach Edey, the National Player of the Year at Purdue, and come here, which he wasn't going to do. You told me Kelvin Sampson, who came out last year and said he was not leaving Houston, got a new contract there. You said Tony Bennett in Virginia, who said he wasn't coming here. So Eric Musselman was the only one, and Eric Musselman's doing doing worse than Texas is right now. So I can tell you, we can list off the guys that you thought were going to be the guys last year and are not Jags, and they're real great coaches. And they're not you can't judge the talent on one season. And he also took us to the Elite Eight, even though none of you will admit it, except for my people on there, my fans, my people will admit it. He took the team to the Elite Eight last season and gets zero credit for it. It's insane that there's a leap in logic that he had something to do with them getting to the Elite Eight. And again, you can text in if Terry can't win him home, he'll be gone. I don't know if that's your phone or not, but you've texted that in a lot of times. I appreciate you listening, though. Deadlift Shrimp, Nate. Yes, a band of horses do have the Deadlift Shrimp. Yes, another great foreign player. All right, let's take a last break. If you want to hit us up on the text line, 512-447-3776. 512-447-3776 is the text line number if you guys want to jump in. Send us a text before we get out of here. We're going to take our last break. We'll come back, wrap it up here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. All right, wrapping things up here on the Sports Complex. Texter says, if you consider the U.S. Virgin Islands foreign, then I would say Tim Duncan. I like that. I wasn't considering it, but I like that. I like where your head's at. I'm a fan of where your head is at in that one. I'm surprised nobody brought up my man Arvydas Sabonis. I know he came over late, so he wasn't quite the guy he was earlier. But man, Arvydas, when you watch that film of him when he was overseas, still he was so good. He would have been so dominant. He was also ahead of his time by a long time. But that Arvydas Sabonis was one heck of a player. Nate, I can't. Why do you keep sending in stuff I can't read? And Texter says none of that changes the fact that RT is a Jag, and I will say none of that changes the fact that you are wrong. If you're gonna be a hater, be a hater. But just say I'm a hater. I'm a hater. I don't like. I expect Texas basketball to be winning a national championship every year, even though we've never won one. Let's keep throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Let's keep doing it. It'll work one day. We'll get more into it tomorrow, I'm sure. We'll talk a lot more basketball. We'll talk more football. We'll get closer to the Super Bowl. All that fun stuff happening as we continue the journey along here on the Sports Complex. Until then, though, be kind, be safe, keep your underwear clean, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow for more of the Sports Complex.